And just to start us off, I would like all of us as a panelist to just take us through why does the Bamako Convention still matter? Okay. Why the Bamako Convention still matter today for Africa's environmental protection, public health and development agenda, as we talk about understanding and making sure that Africa is not a dumping site anymore. Maybe I can start from you, Dennis.
Thank you very much, Robbie. I understand that now when discussing multilateral environmental agreements and diplomacy with journalists, the term award-winning is very important, but more elevated is multi-award winning, multiple award winning. Thank you for the education. So I will leave a lot of the health matters because my colleague Bushra ended on a very high note of the health of the child and that of our soils. I'll discuss in terms of politics and discuss in terms of also our welfare as a society. The Bamako Convention was born out of an existing mechanism. It was born out of Article 11 of the Basel Convention, which is now part of what we call the BRS mechanism, the Basel Rotterdam Stockholm mechanism now. It's a convention on its own. And the two, Basel Rotterdam Stockholm and Bamako, now BRS and Bamako to shorten it, are hosted by the UNEP, which is in Africa. And the significance of this is, first of all, it's an outright documented treaty law. Maybe it's a bit of a mouthful, but it is the only convention, in my view, where Africa came together to say no. Africa came together to say no. I am not very conversant with all the treaties that exist or the conventions, but I do know that that is one of the only treaties that I know that is particularly designed to refuse. The others are sort of designed to embrace with a sense of negotiation under special needs and circumstances. But this one is our own convention that speaks to Africa for Africa and to the rest of the world. That is number one. In terms of society and political integration, it is one of the mechanisms or one of the conventions through which Africa can express unity in political goodwill. That we might have had issues discussing conventions like the one on the International Trade for Endangered Species CITES, and we might have had differences when we are negotiating now the ongoing discussions of the international legally binding instrument to end plastic pollution, including in the marine environment, which people are calling the Plastics Treaty. We might be discussing those and having disagreements between, Kenya sees it this way, South Africa sees it that way, Somalia sees it differently. But on this one, we agree that radioactive waste cannot be imported and we shall control it. But it also opens another Pandora's box. The understanding of control, if we say we are going to control our voices in this room, so that we don't look at it like politicians don't have goodwill. When we say let's control our voices, if I speak and Tess speaks, and then we have Professor Quinn speaking and Tom speaking, what control means to them is totally different from what controlling my voice means to me. If you tell a computer scientist and a software developer like, our good brother Mondi, to control the level of engagement with user traffic and so on, what that means to them and what that means to Zuckerberg and his team is totally different. So even the definition of the terms control, the definitions of even terms like prohibition, is where we begin to have problems in Africa. And why? I think we have a big problem because we also negotiate most of these treaties in non-African languages. Colonial languages, the thing is that it continues to get micro and nano. So previously it was easy to identify, radioactive waste with that, horror sign of the skull and an X yellow and so on. But now it's becoming increasingly complex because it is infused in the food we eat. It is infused in the fertilizers that we use to kill our soils. It is infused in the cosmetics that our people use. It is so detrimental that sometimes we even lack the capacity and the technology, and not forget the human resource to be able to cater for that. So the economic losses and the damages are way beyond what can be seen. I submit.
Thank you so much, Dennis. And I've seen you insisting on makeup that women put. you know, as a journalist, when we hear stakeholders speak about these issues, we look at what can we report on. What is this that this person is seeing that is creating damage, and we continue using, like, personally, I'm a case study, so I should be one of the reporting persons. So, Bushra, you spoke passionately about children's health and the environment that we live in. And since you're here on behalf of Somali, I would like to understand how such issues, how, like, porous borders, informal waste trade, and limited inspection capacity affect the enforcement on the national level when we speak now about these issues.
Okay. You have actually mentioned all the challenges that we have had in this sector with the porous borders, the lack of information sharing. As Dennis said earlier, David, sorry, you cannot control the wind that carries something from Kenya and blows it to Somalia. You cannot control the water that flows from higher ground and comes down. And then as a child on the beaches of Mogadishu somewhere, encounters this, ends up ingesting it, ends up getting sick, and then it's generational. It keeps coming in, and you know, the effects are long lasting. I don't know if you know about the tsunami that happened in 2004 that had brought containers and containers of waste on the Somali coastline to the beaches, and they were all toxic waste that nobody knew was being dumped there. As you know, as Fozia had mentioned earlier, that Somalia has the longest coastline in Africa and the most beautiful beaches, might I say, and the least polluted beaches also. And unfortunately, because it's such a huge shipping line that a lot of these ships that pass there, you don't know what they're dropping over years and years and years, maybe even from the 1970s, 1960s, what they've been dropping into the oceans. And that's not just affecting Somalia. It goes as a bowl over effect, and it goes to Kenya, it goes to Tanzania, it goes to the entire East Africa region, and then slowly it seeps into the rest. And this affects our children's health. This affects our children's futures. So Somalia as a nation, I believe they have taken it as they've taken an aggressive stance against this, and have said, okay, fine, we're putting this into our strategic plans. We're putting this into our policy. We're trying to move from policy to action and trying to do things with partners, supporting partners who will come out and say, fine, we're doing this together. I believe that awareness is key. Somebody living in the outskirts of let's say, a small village between Kenya and Somalia doesn't know what this plastic is doing to our environment. Somebody who's living in, let's say, the Sahara Desert doesn't understand how it's affecting Africans. Earlier, you asked us, why is the Bamako Convention relevant now? I would ask you, why isn't it relevant right now? Every single thing that even the students of USIU had mentioned earlier, every single thing that we consume, that we have now, has chemicals in them, as David had mentioned earlier. Yeah. So our day-to-day life is even more affected now than it was in 1999 when African countries came together and said, let's make a convention for Africans, by Africans, and say no. And I believe that this is the time to take that convention and put it into action. I hope that answers it.
Yes, perfectly well. And as you've put it, the Bamako Convention is here for Africans, by Africans, with Africans. So we take lead. Now, Tess, I would like you to dig a little bit towards now the marginalized community and gender roles when it comes to hazardous waste disappropriately, which affects women and marginalized communities. So how do you think can Bamako Convention better integrate gender-responsive and community-centered approaches when it comes now to understanding how better we can make sure that our environment is not a dumping site?
Thank you so much. So as we begin, we normally say that we cannot measure, or rather we cannot improve something that we've not measured.
Tess,
And yes.
hold a bit. David, I'm told I have to release you. Thank you for joining us. A round of applause as David leaves us. I'm sure the students will be outside waiting to get your every detail as they replace you. Okay, thank you very much. All right. Tess, sorry, and please.
Thank you. So the main thing that I would want to also focus on at a policy level, as I've mentioned earlier, we cannot improve something that we've not measured. And one of the most important thing, looking at Bamako that was came into force in 1991, rather in 1998, we need to find ways of amending just a little bit of it. And at a policy level, I'd like to see all of us getting together and advocating to have some components on gender disaggregated data and sex disaggregated data. And just to give us an example is that when you look at race in all of us, whenever we get sick, symptoms, especially on our skin, they show up totally differently from someone who's Asian, someone who's white. And you find that when it comes to health, it is very important for us to have representation, for our own doctors, for our own, all of us to understand how things are showing up. Because once, I know if I give us the challenge of going to Google to look at some of the symptoms on how they manifest, especially on our skin color, it's totally different. So as we go on and as we try to also feed in and key in data, it is important for us to have that at a regional level so that as people write it, bring them on board to see what is happening at the national level for policy making process and also at the international level so that we are able to see the life cycle from policy to implementation, because they play a key role and they can also alert us and say that yes, this is happening and it is important, because as my two colleagues have mentioned earlier, if in one area we neglect it, then we are going to feel it in another area. So with that, I submit.
Thank you so much, Tess. And it's good that you've mentioned the role of women. And again, if you look at our communities, even when you go looking for information, the first people who will speak to you are women.
Yes.
They're the ones who go to the river.
Yes.
Most of the women go to fetch firewood, and they will tell you this is where the problem is, this is what we are facing, this is what our children are ailing from, and that role is very critical when we are addressing these challenges. Now, Lavi, when you are speaking, you mentioned about Rwanda and the big steps that you've already taken. So maybe you can take us through some of the steps that have already been taken to implement the Bamako Convention on your level.
Okay, thank you very much. So as Rwanda, there are several initiatives that we've taken as a country to implement this convention. Maybe one thing I forgot to mention earlier is that Rwanda also serves as the first vice president in the Conventions Bureau, which highlights our commitment as a country to regional efforts in hazardous waste management and environmental health. And then on the ground, one of the things that we've done, whether in policy or also on the ground, one of them is initiating a comprehensive waste management law that was initiated and gazetted in August 2019. And what it does is that it manages the waste producer liability, hazardous waste regulations, the treatment and the transboundary movement, which serves to run as the primary legal tool for the implementation of this convention. The second thing is the prohibition of hazardous imports. So there's a national law that explicitly prohibits the import of all hazardous products and radioactive wastes, aligning directly with the core ban on these wastes that we are talking about here. The other thing that Rwanda is well known for is the plastic bags and single-use plastics. So as you know, Rwanda was one of the first countries to implement a law against plastic bags. That was back in 2008, which was later expanded in 2009 to ban the single-use plastic items, which of course also promotes the cleaner production and waste minimization across the country. The other thing is the ministerial order on chemicals. So there's a ministerial order that was established a specific list of prohibited and restricted chemicals and polluting substances to control their trade and distribution. So it details what these materials and products are, which is also helping us to implement this convention. And the other practical and institutional initiatives that we've taken is to designate a competent authority, which is the Rwanda Environment Management Authority, REMA, which is assigned to follow up on these particular issue that we are discussing today. So it has been designated as a key competent authority responsible for regulating the import and export of chemicals and hazardous wastes. And the last one that I can conclude on, which is more practical, I would say, is a hazardous waste management project that was initiated by REMA, the institution that I mentioned earlier. So this is a 5-year project worth $7 million US. It's called the Hazardous Waste Management Project. It was launched in 2023, and its purpose is basically to protect human health and the environment from the harmful effects of chemicals like persistent organic pollutants, also known as POPs, the mercury, and also the polychlorinated biphenyls. You'll excuse me, I'm not a scientist, but what I've just mentioned. And so those are, in brief, the steps, the practical steps that Rwanda has taken to implement this convention. And as I conclude, again, you can do things as a country, you can put in place policies, but it also comes down to us as the people, as wananchi. Like, what are we doing to, as my colleagues have mentioned, there are things that countries that can do, but there's also someone who is there in the village, someone who goes to fetch water, someone who dumps waste wherever they want. So it's up to us as, wananchi, and also as journalists who are here. There's something you mentioned about, how to report. You can say hazardous waste, but if one asks you what are the examples of this waste, I'm sure few of us, including me, will be able to explain what these hazardous waste mean. If they tell you them, because as we normally say, they are not even the future leaders, but they are also the current leaders. So who knows, in the next 5 years or 10 years, you'll be the next Minister of Environment. If you already know what hazardous wastes are, if you already know what radioactive wastes are, you'll be able to now implement it and ensure that we have a continent that is free from these harmful wastes. I hope I've answered your question.
You've done really well. And,
you.
Talking about Rwanda and even talking about the ban on plastic material, recently I watched a video on TikTok. Most of us are now on TikTok. And I saw a doctor explaining about plastic material that we buy. They are plastic, apparently, they are written numbers. They have number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4. And when we are checking to buy this plastic material, most of which we use in our households, most of which our children use in schools, how do we know that I'm not supposed to use number 1 for this period of time? There's a particular material, plastic material, that should not be used more than once. There's a particular plastic material that does not supposed to go to the microwave, but that is not information that most people have. That video was quite important to me, and I'm hoping that we can find such information on the platform to be able to disseminate the same to the public when we are trying to say, we are trying to, reverse the effects that we have in our environment. How do we stop the effect that is coming to us or that already exists in our society? So thank you very much, and we hope that we can borrow from Rwanda. That's why I would like Geoffrey Serede to tell us, from all this information and what, for example, Rwanda has done, but we still have gaps that exist in other African nations. What are these gaps, and how are they dragging us back in terms of enforcement and accountability when it comes to ensuring a cleaner Africa?
Thank you. The first gap that I would actually think of from the top of my head is a production gap. That when we talk about import, and when you look at your breakfast table this morning, what percentage of what you consumed is produced in your country, locally? That as long as a significant chunk of what we consume is imported, including the toothpick that you use after you consume the food, then it's very hard to control the narrative around dumping. Very, very hard. So we have no alternative but to industrialize. We have to industrialize. As long as we are net importers, and clearly from the Kenyan perspective, you'll see the industries that actually were the mainstay of the fashion industry are all dead. Cotton was a big thing here, and it's no longer there. Thrift shops are actually the go-to thing now all across the towns. How? because the West is dumping all their clothes to Africa. Because we want to wear designer brands. When you say, I want to put on Levi jeans, if your local tailor told you that I can do the same for you, you'd be like, it's not a branded jeans, so I will not put it on. So that is affecting our environment, because much of what we are consuming, look at the vehicle industry. Almost 99% of the vehicles that are on the roads here are old vehicles from Japan. So what percentage of what we drive on our roads is manufactured here? To check on our carbon credits. And when we talk about carbon credits, do we have carbon penalties? Do we punish as much as we reward? That those who dump, if Japan actually sends an 8-year-old vehicle to Kenya, there has to be a penalty. They're dumping that vehicle, they're not selling. And by the time you're using it, and like I mentioned, we are the best of the food chain. After you use it here, you can't actually export it to an alternate country. So we are dying slowly because of the dearth of production, in my opinion.
Wow, interesting. So then Cassidy will tell us, with this information and even the gaps that exist, how does the regional, the clearinghouse mechanism platform, for example, address existing these data gaps and even the reporting when it comes to the challenges under the Bamako Convention?
Yeah, so thank you very much. I'll answer that very quickly. What we have on the clearinghouse mechanism platform is a one-stop shop for all the data. So if country X said that they submitted the report, it will be available online and anybody can go search it. And we are also employing AI tools. You don't have to read the whole thing. If certain parts of it are more interesting to you than others, you can go for that. So I think starting with just data and information availability and transparency on what is really happening and what's not happening. So if the thing about having this is that if a country is a member and has not submitted for the last 5 years, it's going to be available also by default on the platform, right? Because people will be looking for your report and they can't find it. So I think the first thing we are doing is making sure data information is available. The second one, as I showed before, we don't want data and reporting to be so burdensome that there is not enough time or resources for countries to do this. So to make it online is our attempt to make it easier. And then finally, I want to end with 2 stories, yeah, in terms of the future of what tech can actually help us to do in regards to this convention. I asked about Nairobi River. It flows from here all the way to the Indian Ocean, right? It is entirely possible, even today, for us to have mini drones floating on that water from this point to that point, where we can tell the different levels of contamination, turbidity, all this. I'm not saying it's not there, but I'm saying that's something that can be done next week. These tools are actually available. So if you're a concerned citizen, you can log onto the portal and get the live data given by an automated system, not a human being that might sometimes change one value to another, because that's one example. The other story I wanted to tell you, and I don't know whether you guys caught wind of it. Early in December, there was an article about an accident in Zambia. Zambia, of course, mines copper. They are very big copper mines. But when you mine copper, you end up with a very big landfill of acid and hazardous material that are necessary for you to mine copper. And after some time, that dam broke. That dam is called an infill dam. That dam broke. And it polluted the waterways right through the capital city. I think it went for almost 100 kilometers, right? Until today, the stakeholders in Zambia have not been able to get over that accident and get over that side. So let me go back as to what tech could have done, right? For a dam to break, there's a series of things that are happening. You'll see a crack. You'll see things up. It will not just break on its own. So if you had, for example, a rule that said, look, anybody doing mining and throwing all their waste into an open pit dam, you have to install certain sensors and certain capabilities that are available, not only for the government or not only for you, but are available for even the people that are impacted by your activity there could have been a lot of early warning signs, right? You can see what's happening. You can see its feelings faster than usual. You can see the walls are going down. So I'm saying this for the benefit, especially of the students at USAU. There is a whole range of solutions now available, and I think our young people are the best placed to actually bring them to life, to demonstrate their value, and I want to say even commercial value. Because even the mining company that was mining copper, I don't think they sat there in a room and said, you know what, today let us just go break the dam. That was not their intent. So if you went there and you sold them that solution earlier on, you'll be not only supporting the convention, you're probably getting a good living, you're probably learning a lot more about how to do these things. So technology, I believe, beyond the clearinghouse, we have to then deploy it into critical areas to help us with data and with early warning and the ability to stop things from getting bad.
Maybe I'll ask you to remain with the microphone because I'm standing between all of us and lunch so that we can go down and, for those who have questions, they can ask questions. So as we close up, everyone has a minute because we can spend the whole week here. So maybe I would like us to give our commitments on behalf of, our states, our partners, our stakeholders, and following this dialogue, basically, to ensure that we have better reporting, better data recorded, strong compliance, and meaningful action regionally, basically. So I'll give our commitments a minute each.
Yeah, okay, I'll take 10 seconds. One of the capabilities we've put here is a call center capability. So one of the commitments we are making is that we're going to reach out to all the 35 member states who have signed up. We're going to reach out to them from the call center. If they've not uploaded their reports, they're going to have the opportunity to. We're going to train them on this, and then that's it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, for me, I'll think in the direction of a stakeholder approach, working more with the people who are affected, rather than actually within academia we say that we are in the ivory towers, that we try and prescribe solutions to problems that the people we are prescribing to do not know. So if we started actually from the people who are directly affected, let's try and get the perspective from them and what solutions do you propose before we come up with solutions, ready-made solutions for them. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Mine will also be brief. So as mentioned earlier, Rwanda remains committed to the effective implementation of the Bamako Convention. And as I've elaborated earlier, there are specific and elaborative initiatives that Rwanda has taken in line with this convention. So nothing is going to change anytime soon. We remain committed to this convention. Thank you.
For me is to assure the young ladies who are here and also the gentlemen that when it comes to understanding the UNEP process, I am here, I'm willing to answer each and every question that you have, because when it comes to getting to interact with the process, it's experiential learning. And at UNEA 7, when I was giving my speeches or keynote addresses, the thing that I was literally telling the young people is that I am begging for your time. I am begging for you to just be willing to follow the process. I will not lie to you that when it comes to advocacy at UNEP, it's something very interesting. It is a boring process. And the best time, yes, and I'm going to tell you, yes, it is, because you'll find that when it comes to the, the diplomats, when they are negotiating, they're negotiating over a comma, over a full stop. I know some of us, it would look like, why are we arguing about acknowledge, notice, and all that? It is important. So this is the time that I need us to follow. Like David is here, I am here to talk about the women's major group. There's also the children and youth major group. So there are 9. If you go to the UNEP website, you can look at the civil society space and get to see how you can start, because you have to start from somewhere. And we are saying we are the low-hanging fruits. And also, I know Tom is here. He's going to support that. We need us, especially as Africans, because when you get to the space, yes, you're here at, we normally think that the most important time is during the UNEA period, the COP period. That is not the important. That is not the most important time. The most important time is the intersessional, those times in between, the 2-year process from now to UNEA 8 is going to be happening in December 2027. This is the time. Come in, learn the process, learn to draft statements, learn to get to speak to the DPR, because these are the people that we are pushing to tell them, hey, we need A, B, C, D. And that is the time they always even come to us and ask, so now what do you think we can do? And many a times, I cannot speak on my own behalf because, yes, my organization is accredited to UNEP under children and youth. I'm under women's major group. I represent very many global institutions. I cannot speak on my own behalf. I need your ideas because I cannot do it by myself. So my commitment to you and also to the USIU community, if at all you need us to come here again to even speak to the young people, we are willing to come back, to talk, and also to teach just one step at a time. And when it comes to even having to work with accreditation, when you see the children and youth major group, they give to individuals. If they can reach out even to us, even from the ladies, I am willing to look for that accreditation for you to get to learn the process and to ask as many questions as possible. Thank you.
Last but not least.
Always the hardest place to be.
Sure.
For me, it's very simple. As Somalia, we will finish our ratification of the Bamako Convention and work towards working with the Secretariat and making sure that we are up to date on all of that. But also making sure that we have our national policies and how we are going to implement those policies in place. But also try to work with our international friends and colleagues to see how we can better our situation in not just East Africa, but Africa as a whole. But I also have a challenge for you, our dear journalists and our students. My challenge is for you to make sure that there's awareness. Awareness is key. If today we made a census in just, let's say Kenya, in Nairobi alone, of how many people know about the Bamako Convention and how it protects each and every one of us, it would probably not even be 5%. Unless you have to know it for work or for school, do people actually know about it? So I challenge you to go out there and make this known, make it known that this is an issue for Africans by Africans, and to make it known that, okay, fine, we are doing what we can nationally and internationally, but we need support at the grassroots level. We need support from the Mama Mboga. We need support from the person who comes to your home every morning to pick up your garbage. We need support from every single person in our African society, not just for now, but for 50, 100 years in the future. Yes.
All right. And on behalf of my fellow journalists, invite us to Somalia. Invite us to Rwanda. We want to tell these stories because it's important. Amaniaji. See, that's good. Journalists, you're ready to go to Rwanda, to go to Somalia. I am ready. And definitely the impact of this dialogue basically will be measured only if we come together as states, as secretariat, stakeholders, media, and the community at large. We can't work as individuals. We have to come together. Tess, you'll hear from most of us. Myself, speaking for myself, I'll look for you properly so that we can see what we can do, because we all have a role to play. And I know you, in a room with journalists, expect questions. So allow me, I saw Leon, a multi-award-winning journalist, putting up his hand. I'm sure he has a few questions. Let us try and make them brief. Direct a question to specific.
Thank you very much. To the far end, sir, I heard you mention AI 17 times. I counted. So my question to you is, last year I was seated with the Chief of Digital in November 2025 when the United Nations Environmental Programme released the New Horizons report. And the report highlighted something I took note. The Chief Digital said, training AI models requires vast computational resources, with computing power usage increasing tenfold between 2018 and 2022. With fossil fuels still providing over 60% of total global electricity generation. The rising demand for AI computing risks increases greenhouse gas emissions. When I hear you preach about AI, I'm wondering, aren't we shooting ourselves in the same foot? Because the same AI is actually making the environment worse. The one thing I've not heard experts address is human behavior. For me, it all boils down to human behavior. You remember during COVID when everything shut down, I'm telling you the environment recovered. Everything worked well. We address other things but not human behavior. what are we doing as champions, as people, to address human behavior? That's my food for thought, because we might have all the best tech, we must have everything. If you go to Rwanda, for example, you will not see no border rider without a helmet. It has been inculcated in them. But in Kenya, people pass anywhere with motorbikes. Just as an example, what are we doing about human behavior? Thank you.
I think those are two questions, one for Kasidi and one for Tess. Tess, I want you to answer the human behavior part, Kasidi, the AI. Will we note them so that we take another round? Sawa.
Hello, thank you. My name is Imran Mohammed. I'm the Executive Director of Ergo International Peace Initiative. We mainly advance the Sustainable Development Goals and majorly work around peace. But peace, as you know it, is correlating with the environment and climate action as well. My question is directed to Tom, and maybe some of the panelists can respond. I've seen a low uptake of the Bamako Convention by the African states, and even a lower number of those who have ratified and implemented and enforced. My question will be, what are some of these factors causing this problem, and how best can we get, for example, the whole of Africa to ratify, endorse, and completely on board on the Bamako Convention? Thank you.
Bushra, you'll help us with that. What can we do to make sure that all African countries are on board when it comes to Bamako Convention? Okay. One more round. One. There are many. Okay. Okay. Can we answer those, or we take one more, then three? Three. Sawa. That's okay. So yours, and then we answer those ones first.
Okay. My question goes to Madam Bushra. You said that we may not be able to control the flow of water and waste materials to other coastlines. And I'm a big fanatic of swimming and all that. And you said that Somalia has the largest coastline. So what will be the suitable means to hold people accountable over their contribution to the accumulation of hazardous wastes?
And I'm told time is not on our side, so allow us to answer those ones briefly. Then if you have any other questions, kindly, we see each other behind the tent, the African way. That's okay. And lunch is served, so we can talk and have the discussions while we're having our lunch. Sawa. Sorry for anyone I've locked out. Meet them at the tent. Kindly.
So let me take it. Has come up in multiple platforms where I am involved as well. So AI is a new frontier. It's here whether we like it or not, right? It's like saying computers have hazardous waste, right? But all of us in this room probably have a laptop, a phone, or a smartphone. It's here and it's here to stay. So where I think as Africa we need to focus is then shape it to work for us, right? For example, in Kenya, we do have abundant geothermal, right? That's a clean energy. You can actually run data centers. But as of today, to the best of my knowledge, there is no AI data center in Kenya, or for that matter, I think the only one maybe is in South Africa or North Africa. Right? Yes, I understand. So there's this thing that is changing the world. It's here with us. However, I feel like as a continent, we've not really sat down, said, how do we want it to work for us? Just like Bamako, we said, okay, there's Basel, that's all good, but for Africa, we need something that is stronger and better. For example, nothing stops us in Africa from saying that our data centers are going to be renewable energy, right? Nothing stops us from doing that. In fact, in Africa, sorry, I'm going to go just one level lower. When you go to ChatGPT and you're checking all those things you're checking, all those models are run mostly on data from different continents, right? There's a bit of Africa in the training, but I'm telling you, there's so many African questions that those things will not answer in the right way. So for us, it's determining how do we make AI work for us, and there's a lot of opportunity in that angle. Thank you.
Right, Tess, human behavior, 1 minute, then we can finish.
To answer that, when it comes whenever we make these treaties at an international level, it boils down to the country, what are they going to do? And when we compare case studies across Africa and also other Asian countries, we've seen that whenever there's consequences, people tend to obey. And when you look at African countries, there is no much like consequences of when it comes to human behavior, that is. If at all we knew that if I was to pollute and I was going to be in prison, or maybe you're going to lose some substantial amount of money, then I know you're going to make sure that you're going to clean. You're going to make sure that, yes, you're not polluting. Number two, if at all it was something that maybe you're belonging and it was just there, you'd be the one to pick it up. So for me, when it comes to advocating, I would say, yes, there's need to have some element of consequences in our implementation. That is one. The other bit would be, especially with us young people coming up, if we can make it fashionable to do something, because at times also, when you push, I'm a strong believer of my beliefs are mine, I don't have to push it for you, and this is my own opinion. If at all you can make some of these things fashionable, if at all making the environment be clean, something that as Gen Zs, as zillennials, millennials, we can hop onto this and make sure that, yes, we are doing it, because it is doable. When we move across even different social classes, you can see that there are specifically some areas that is not being done, and then there are some other areas that actually the environment is super clean, and there is that community where it comes to say that, yes, we do not want this, and they're able to accomplish it. I hope that answers.
As fashionable as hugging a tree for 72 hours. Bushra, kindly help us round this up.
Okay, I'm going to start on this side first. I think your question was how to get African countries together to be able to ratify and make this treaty come home. I think, personally, not as Somalia, I really do believe that just as we've done today, a dialogue needs to be opened, where there's political will and these countries come together and they say, okay, we are coming here, we are sitting down as African countries, as the African Union, as African states, African people, and we are talking about this and we're prioritizing it. Unfortunately, environmental issues are not a priority in most African countries. Most will think, let's deal with this poverty, let's deal with unemployment, let's deal with peace and conflict. Once we have all of that, if people have housing, if people have, once to deal with all of these things, then we can think about, okay, then we can think about the environment. But that's a wrong strategy in my mind. I believe it goes hand in hand, it works together, and you can't have peace without, as you mentioned, having an environmental aspect to it. You can't have employment without having also help. It comes together. So there needs to be political will and an acceptance of all countries coming together and saying, we're sitting down and we're talking about this. We need to open the dialogue first. I hope that answers it.
All right.
And on this side, you asked about the water and what we can do to curb pollution in the coasts of Somalia. I believe that was the question.
Yes.
Okay.
Holding people accountable.
Okay. See, accountability is a bit more difficult than we can just say it, right? But knowing who is the one who's dumping these things here, because Somalia actually victims most of the time. As I mentioned, we are on a shipping line, and we do have the longest coast in Africa. So we don't know who is dumping all of these things. We don't know where it's coming from. Before the 2004 tsunami, we didn't even know that tons and tons of containers were in our seabeds. Yeah, so information, I believe, is important, which is why we had made an aggressive move to join the Bamako Convention and make environmental policy key in our strategic and developmental plans, nationally and internationally. So I believe that's a good first step that we have taken, and hopefully with time we can build on that. We can work regionally with our region, with our friends in the East African community and the rest of Africa in time. But that takes time, and it needs great minds like you to do the research, to come up and say, this is what's happening, these are the numbers, and our fellow journalists to disseminate that information as well.
All right.
Yeah?
I think we should end it there. If we continue, we will be locking out those who had questions. Leon, behind the tent. And let me appreciate our amazing panelists who have done a very good job telling us and, making us understand more about Bamako Convention, what it's about, and how we can all ensure that Africa is not a dumping site. Thank you very much to you, the audience, and a big round of applause to the panelists.